There comes a point in a man's life when the fire starts to fade. The woman who once shook his world now barely stirs a spark. Her touch, which once felt electric, becomes routine. And he pulls back, not because he's angry, not because someone else has taken her place, but because something deeper has happened. He's seen through the illusion. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher known for his brutal honesty, understood this long before most men dared to admit it. He warned that what we call passion isn't some gift from the heavens. It's not about love or happiness. It's biology. A trap designed with one goal, reproduction. Behind every romance, every soulmate story, lies nature's hidden plan, to shape the next generation, not to make us happy. So what you thought was destiny was really just biology. What felt like falling in love was your DNA tricking your mind. And once nature gets what it wants, or sees it won't, everything changes. The hunger fades. The fire dies. Most men panic when this happens. They think something's wrong with them. They wonder if they've lost their masculinity, their drive, their spark. But the truth is the opposite. You're not broken. You're waking up. Even science today proves it. Men aren't endlessly hungry, as movies and culture like to show. Desire isn't constant. It burns brightest with novelty, with mystery, with contrast. But when routine sets in, when life becomes predictable, the flame weakens. Living together, sharing every detail, turns passion into habit. We think moving in together is romantic. But Schopenhauer would have laughed. He would have said, "You're taking something sacred and putting it under harsh lights. You're dissecting a dream and expecting it to stay alive." Desire can't survive too much exposure. And that's not just philosophy, it's reality. One clear example is the Westermarck effect. It shows that people raised closely together, like siblings, naturally lose attraction for each other. Not because they're resisting, but because the desire never shows up. Familiarity doesn't create attraction. It kills it. Now think about long-term relationships. When a man sees the same woman every day, hears every complaint, shares the same routines, the mystery fades. His deeper nature says, this is no longer what we want. Schopenhauer reminds us, nature doesn't care about our comfort or romance. It only cares about survival. And when that goal isn't served anymore, the drive vanishes, not out of cruelty, but by design. This leaves men silent, questioning themselves. But Schopenhauer gives them something no modern self-help book does, dignity. He tells men the truth, the fading of desire isn't failure. It's a sign. The mission is complete. You're free now, if you're strong enough to accept it. Of course, freedom doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like emptiness. Peace can feel like apathy. Stepping out of the spell can look like withdrawal. But it isn't weakness. It's clarity. Remember, Schopenhauer called sexual desire the strongest craving in human life. It takes over the mind like madness. But when that madness finally ends, what's left isn't collapse, it's vision. You wake up. You see her not as a goddess, but as she is, human, ordinary, familiar. You may still care for her. But the burning obsession is gone. That isn't failure. It's reality. The truth is that your deepest cravings were never fully yours. They were nature's tool to keep the species alive. And when that game is over, the fire goes out. That's why long-term relationships often feel suffocating. The small talk, the chores, the predictability, these don't just dull desire. They kill it at its roots. Many couples even end up living more like siblings than lovers. Emotional closeness grows, but physical desire fades. And yet men are told to feel guilty for noticing this. They're called broken, lazy, ungrateful. But Schopenhauer knew better. Nature doesn't care about your happiness. It only cares that you chase long enough to reproduce. After that, the mask falls. The divine turns ordinary. That's the truth. Men don't lose interest in women. They lose interest in the illusion. What fades isn't manhood, it's the spell. Desire and intimacy were never built to survive forever under the same roof. This is why traditional societies were so different. Men spent most of their lives with men, working, hunting, building. Women were with women, raising children. Time together was rare. And because it was rare, it was exciting. Scarcity kept the spark alive. Scarcity built passion. We've forgotten that. Now we chase closeness, thinking more time together means more love. But the opposite is true. Too much closeness creates familiarity. Familiarity creates indifference. And indifference leaves men confused, wondering why the fire is gone. But Schopenhauer's message is clear, you were never meant to want her forever. You were meant to wake up. Schopenhauer wasn't just talking about desire. He was pointing at the human condition itself. He saw that when sexual craving fades, it's not a disease, it's not a defect, it's the first sign of sanity. What most men call love, he called captivity. A biological trick, dressed up in poetry and perfume, pretending to be something divine. And when that spell breaks, when the eyes finally clear, a man wakes up in a reality he never expected. He's no longer under the spell. The problem is, nobody prepares men for this moment. There are no rituals for the quiet death of desire. No cultural language for the morning that comes when longing disappears. So men suffer in silence. They think they're broken. They think they've lost something essential. But the truth is, they haven't lost anything except the light. Take Schopenhauer's most infamous line, "The postcoital feeling of disgust is the true voice of nature." People laugh at it, dismiss it as cynical. But look closer. What he meant is that the hollow emptiness men feel right after sex isn't random. It's not just a mood swing. It's nature pulling back. The will to life had already gotten, or failed to get, what it wanted. The puppet strings fall slack. The man realizes, maybe for the first time, he was never really in control. That doesn't sound romantic. Because it isn't. It's reality. And reality, at first, rarely feels comforting. The podcast framed it another way: desire fades with familiarity. When two people live together under constant exposure, the mystery disappears. And when the mystery dies, attraction dies with it. Men don't burn for what they fully know. They burn for what's just out of reach. When every secret is revealed, when every routine is shared, the fire goes out. This isn't immaturity. It's not ingratitude. It's biology. Without polarity, without tension and difference, there is no passion. Traditional societies understood this. That's why men and women lived in different spheres. Men worked and hunted with men. Women raised children with women. Time together was rare, which kept the spark alive. Today, we push for total closeness. We believe love thrives in full transparency. But in tearing down every boundary, we also destroy the mystery that fuels attraction. Schopenhauer saw it clearly: marriage is the trap nature uses to deceive the individual into acting for the benefit of the species. Once the trap is sprung, once routine sets in, once the masks fall, desire slips away. Some men chase affairs, addictions, fantasies, desperate to get it back. But it never lasts. Because the misunderstanding remains. They think fading desire means something's wrong. But in truth, it's just a signal. The masculine drive isn't infinite. It's selective. It ignites with novelty, with risk, with possibility. Once everything is secured, owned, domesticated, the drive doesn't vanish, it shifts. It looks elsewhere for an outlet. And here's where Schopenhauer offers something most men never hear: a way forward. He didn't say numb yourself or drown in cheap pleasures. He said transcend it. He believed a man could take that same energy and redirect it toward clarity, discipline, insight. In his eyes, the man who outgrows his cravings isn't cursed. He's chosen. The more clearly we think, the more we see that the true aim of life is not enjoyment, but the negation of the will. That was Schopenhauer's rebellion. The man who no longer chases every thrill isn't collapsing, he's maturing. He's reclaiming his agency from nature's grip. But it's a lonely path. Few men talk about it. The world still tells men their worth is measured by how much they want, how much they conquer. But what if that's wrong? What if true masculinity isn't measured by appetite, but by the ability to walk away? What if losing desire isn't weakness, but evolution? Right now, there's a quiet shift happening in men everywhere. They don't always recognize it. They just feel less compelled by the fantasies that once drove them. At first they panic. Then they grieve. And finally, if they're wise, they realize, they're not less of a man. They're more of themselves. Schopenhauer never wrote to flatter. He wrote to free. He revealed that real liberation doesn't come from indulging passion, but from outgrowing it. Freedom doesn't come by clinging to the flame. It comes by stepping beyond the need to burn. Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. When that field expands, when craving finally lifts, what once looked like love often looks like dependency. What once felt like intimacy looks like addiction. What once seemed divine is revealed as biology's trick to keep you chasing. And in that silence, where desire used to roar, a man discovers something unexpected: space. Space to think. Space to create. Space to see the game for what it really is, not sacred, but staged. Not divine, but practical. A clever design of biology, dressed up in poetry. The podcast was right. Longing fades under the weight of overexposure. Too much closeness doesn't deepen passion, it suffocates it. Desire dies slowly, as mystery dissolves. Even the most beautiful woman in the world will eventually become ordinary if the polarity is gone. Beauty alone doesn't sustain desire. Mystery does. Modern relationships almost guarantee the opposite. Constant access. shared everything. No distance. No tension. And so, no fire. Here's the cruel irony: when men lose interest, society blames them. It calls them selfish, immature, broken. But they're not retreating out of weakness. They're responding to the will's retreat. And the will is like a ruthless god. It commands, it deceives, it rewards briefly, and then it leaves. A man who clings to it rots. A man who lets go steps into something rare, peace. Peace doesn't look like passion. It doesn't make your heart race, your palms sweat, or your mind fill with fantasies. Peace is quieter. Less dramatic. But Schopenhauer understood something most people miss: peace, simple, steady peace, is the only real antidote to illusion. And it's what a man finds when he finally stops mistaking his cravings for truth. To the outside world, it may look like you've lost something. You're not chasing anymore. You're not performing. You're not proving yourself by how many women you can attract, or by how hungry your appetite is. But the truth is, you haven't lost anything. You've simply stepped away from a game that was never built for your good. You've stopped dancing for a force that never had your best interest in mind. Schopenhauer said it best: a man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. That's the point. You can't force yourself to keep desiring what's already been consumed. You can't reignite a flame that was never yours in the first place. That fire belonged to nature, to biology, to the will. And when its work is done, it leaves. What remains is an emptiness, it's clarity. But here's the catch: in today's world, clarity is often mistaken for depression. A man who no longer feels the compulsive urge to chase is told he's broken. He's told he's lost his masculinity. That something is wrong with his hormones, his drive, his identity. But what if none of that is true? What if this isn't the end of meaning, but the beginning of it? Schopenhauer pointed toward renunciation, not because he hated life, but because he understood it deeply. He saw the endless cycle, the hunger, the jealousy, the heartbreak, the highs and lows. And he said, enough. He showed us that peace doesn't come from doubling down on the chase. It comes from stepping away. From seeing the fire for what it really is, a show designed to keep you enslaved. Men need to hear this clearly: the fading of desire is not failure. It's awakening. It means you've seen enough, felt enough, lived enough to finally recognize the pattern. And now, you face a choice. You can try to force a flame that was never truly yours. Or you can step into stillness and claim your mind as your own. That moment, that choice, is the real initiation. Not your first kiss, not your first conquest, not even your wedding day. But the day you look at what once consumed you, and realize it no longer controls you. Not because you've gone cold, but because you've evolved. You've outgrown the game. And if these words resonate with you, if the silence inside feels less like emptiness and more like strength, then you have a responsibility. Because countless men are still confused. They still blame themselves for something that isn't failure, but transformation. Share this truth with them. Tell them they're not broken. They're becoming free. This is why channels like this exist, to speak truths culture tries to bury under shame. To remind you that what you're feeling isn't collapse, it's growth. Because here's the reality: the world depends on men not knowing this. Entire industries make money off men thinking they're broken. Thinking they need to keep proving themselves. Thinking they must always chase. But once you see through it, their power collapses. Schopenhauer taught that liberation doesn't come from clinging, it comes from letting go. And when you let go, you discover a new kind of strength. Not loud, not flashy, but steady, unshakable. Men aren't meant to live forever under the spell of passion. They're meant to awaken from it. And when they do, they see clearly. What they once called love often looks more like dependency. What they once called chemistry was just biology's trick. What they once called destiny was just DNA pulling the strings. And with that realization comes space. Space to think, to create, to live for something bigger than the endless chase. That is freedom. So remember this: the fading of desire isn't your downfall. It's your initiation. It's the start of true masculinity, not measured by hunger, but by discipline. By restraint. By the strength to walk away from illusions. You're not broken. You're becoming free. And that is the beginning of everything. If this message resonates with you, if you've felt the fire fade and wondered what's wrong, know this: nothing is wrong. You're awakening. Share this with other men who need to hear it. Because if we don't speak these truths, the lies win. Like the video, share it with someone who's silently struggling, and subscribe if you want more of these truths. The world tells men they're broken when desire fades. But the truth is, that's the moment you finally see clearly. And once you see, there's no going back.